Hello everyone and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah. Here we're holding a Mishnah Berurah Chelik Beis, and Yitzhak Hashem, today we will be completing I am on the wrong page. We will be completing Daf Samach Tes Amid Beis and doing a nice piece of Daf Ayin Amid Aleph. So we are continuing to learn Hilchas B'Tzias HaPas. We pick up today in Siman Kuf Samach Ches in the middle of Sif Yud Gimel, 2 lines off the bottom of Samach Tes Amid Beis, by the words of the Ramah Haggah. Before we begin, our learning should be a schus for Achen Kol Beis Yisrael, HaNesuda Batzara Bashivya, HaImdim Bein Bayam Ubein Bayabasha, HaMakim Mirachem Aleim Vaitzim Mitzar Levacha Me'afel La'oiro Mishub L'Geula, Hashta Bagala Uvizman Kariv and Emar Amen. Our learning should be a schus refuah shalema for our real Yosef ben Miriam Rezel and Meir ben Charisara, who are in need of Rachem and Shamayim. So, we've been discussing the bracha that we make on various types of dough products that may have similarities to bread, and therefore there's a question, exactly what are these? Are they hamaitzi or are they mezainos? So, if we do a brief recap of what we've seen so far in Sif Yud Gimel, in Sif Yud Gimel, we've been discussing products that set out with a blila ava. These are products where we need a dough, and it's a thick, heavy dough, similar to a bread dough or a challah dough. But then, instead of taking it and putting it in an oven and baking it, somebody took it and either boiled it, so it was cooked in a mashke, it was cooked in a liquid, or he was mitagen it, he fried it in oil. Now, we did mention that there is another form of baking that we don't traditionally think of as baking, but in halacha it is considered baking, and it's very important to realize this, and that is if you would take a dough, a blila ava, and you put it into a pan without any mashke, without any liquid, or without any oil, or even if you smear the bottom of the pan with a thin coating of oil, just so that the dough should not catch to the pan, that in halacha is called afiyah. That's called baking, because you're applying heat, you're doing it without any mashke, you're not using any beverage, any liquid. The oil that you're putting in is not because you want to prepare the product in oil, you're not trying to fry it in oil. All you're doing is you're putting a thin layer of grease or oil on the bottom of the pan so that it should not catch. That is called afiyah. That's called baking in the halacha. So again, here in Sif Yud Gimel, we're talking about you had a blila ava, a very bread-like dough, but instead of preparing it through afiyah, instead of baking it, what you did is either bishul, you cooked it, so let's say you boiled it in water, or you fried it in a decent amount of oil, so that what you're trying to do is actually fry it. You want the flavor and the texture of something fried. You're not just protecting it from catching to the pan. So, when it comes to such a product, the Mechaber told us that we have 2 opinions. The Day Rishayna brought down in Sif Yud Gimel, the first opinion that's brought down, which we said was in the name of Rabbi Yaina, Rabbeinu Yerucham, the Ramban. The first opinion over here in Sif Yud Gimel in the Mechaber says that since you did not prepare this the way bread is generally prepared, you didn't bake it, it's no longer considered lechem, and it's no longer considered lechem even if it has teresa danama. Even if the final product actually appears and looks like a bread-like product, it's still not amaitzi, it's only a mezainos. And the Mishnah Berurah told us, basically, the reason is because it's not baked. This shita holds that bread is a baked good. This is not a baked good, it's a boiled good, or a fried good, and such a product is not hamaitzi. That was the Day Rishayna. Then, at the beginning of Samach Tes Amid Beis, the Mechaber brought down the Shitas Rabbeinu Tam, the Shitas Taisus, the Yesh Cholkim, that says no. Over here, we have a blila ava, we have basically a bread dough, so from the outset, this is something which is basically lechem, it's a blila ava, Now, you went ahead and you boiled it, or you went ahead and you fried it. Yes, it's true that you didn't prepare it the way bread is traditionally prepared, but let's take a look at this product. It started out as a blila ava, it started out as a regular bread dough, and at the end of the day, when you finished preparing it, however you prepared it, the bottom line is now it has teresa denama. It looks like a bread product. So the Yesh Cholkim says that the bracha remains hamoitzi, and the nach bracha, the bracha achrona, would remain Berkas HaMazon. That was the opinion of the Yesh Cholkim, and the Ramah wrote 3 lines down on Samach Tesam Beis. The Ramah said noagu lahakel. The minig is to be makel and only make a mezainis and an ala michya on such a product. But the Mechaber did say v'yirei shamayim yetze yidei shneim. The Mechaber said that the Yirei Shamayim should try to be yotze both of these shittas, and therefore he should try to comport himself with the Yesh Cholkim. And what you should do is, if you have such a blila ava that was cooked or was fried, you shouldn't eat it unless you're going to make hamoitzi on a piece of bread and eat it teichasuda. So now you pater it by making hamoitzi on a piece of bread, and now you're okay. That's what we've seen over here so far. Now, the truth is, what's an example of such a product? What's an example of a blila ava that is cooked or fried? So, some would be tempted to say that a donut, our fried donuts, our sufganiyot of Hanukkah of fame, some would say that that is because that does start out as a blila ava, but not really, because even though that starts out as a blila ava, it's generally speaking, it's a dough that's mixed with a lot of sugar and a lot of meiperos and eggs and oil and juices. And it's also fried in so much oil. Zikha, you want the tam of the shemens. I don't know if donuts really gets into this. I don't think donuts gets into this. I think it's very simple that donuts are a mezainos, and the Yirei Shamayim doesn't have to think that he has to wash on a piece of bread in order to eat his donut. We're going to talk about kreplach and things like that. We'll talk about that in a moment. So now let's pick up where we left off, which are with the words of the Ramah, 2 lines off the bottom of Samach Tesam Beis Hagah. Says the Ramah, V'chol zeh, this whole discussion and the 2 shitas over here, where we're talking again about a blila ava that was fried or cooked, and we have one shita that says it's a mezainos, and then we have the more machmir shita who says it's hamoitzi and Birkas HaMazon. Says the Ramah, V'chol zeh lo ma'iri elu de'isbei la'achar afiyah Torah lechem. This whole discussion is only germane when the final product actually has tayar lechem. Now, the Mishnah Berurah is going to jump right away on the Ramah because the phraseology of the Ramah is very difficult. The Ramah says, V'chol zeh lo ma'iri elu de'isbei la'achar afiyah tayar lechem. This whole discussion is only germane if after you bake the final product, it has tayar lechem. But we're not talking about a baked product. We're talking about a blila hava that was boiled or fried. There is no baking. So the Mishnah Berurah jumps on the Ramah and says that the lashon of the Ramah is imprecise. It's lav davka. And when he said la'achar afiyah, he meant la'achar bishol or la'achar tigun. After it was boiled or after it was fried, he's just using the word afiyah to mean however it was prepared. This whole machlokes over here, when we have a blila ava that you either cooked or fried, and we have this machlokes, is it a mezainos or is it hamoitzi? That's only if at the end of the day, however you prepared it, it has tayar lechem. Aval, continues the Ramah on the bottom line, aval ilesbe tayar lechem. But if the final product does not have tayar lechem, kigoyin, for example, says the Ramah lokshin, if you have noodles, now right away when we think of noodles, we think of going to the store and buying a bag of noodles, and it's a hard product that you have to go ahead and cook. That's not really, you can make noodles from scratch at home, and if you make noodles from scratch at home, it's not dried. It's a dough preparation, and you put it into a noodle maker that rolls it out very thin and cuts it into the size and shape that you desire, whether you want spaghetti or vermicelli or whatever it is. But it's a pasta, it's a noodle, it's a dough. And it's a dough that is prepared from a blila ava. But in order to cook the spaghetti or the macaroni or the vermicelli or the fettuccine, we know that you have to cook it. So it's a blila ava that is cooked in water. So you might think that that falls into this machloikis over here, where we have the Dei Rishina that says it's Mezainos, and the Yesh Chalkim, I'm sorry, the Dei Rishina that says that it's a Mezainos, and the Yesh Chalkim that says that it's Hamoitzi, and now Yirei Shamayim should make sure to eat his spaghetti with bread. Says the Rama, no, pasta, noodles, does not fall into this machlokes. Why? Because, like he says on the bottom line, avli les beitar lechem, if the final product does not look like a bread, kigai lakshin, like pasta, noodles, shekarin v'romzalach. Okay, lekulei alma ein mevarchen aleim amaitzi v'loy shalosh brachos. Then everybody, even the Yesh Chalkim, would agree that this is not something that gets a amaitzi, and it's not something that gets a nach bracha of shalosh brachos of birkas hamazayin. Why? Deloy mikvi lechem. Because then everybody would agree, even though it started out as a blila ava, even the Yesh Chalkim, who says that if you have a blila ava and you cooked it or you fried it, it could end up being a moitzi and birkas hamazayin. That's only because it started out as a blila ava, which is like bread, and it ended up like lechem. It ended up like bread because it has tayar lechem. But if you make pasta, it's very nice that it started out with a tayar lechem. But it started out a blila ava, so it started out like lechem. But the final product is nothing like lechem. Nobody's going to look at spaghetti or vermicelli or fettuccine or any other inis or einis or whatever. No one's going to look at them and say that they look like bread. So that is not a bread product, and everybody would agree that that is a mezainos. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Eis Katan Ayin Ches. Like I mentioned to you, he jumps on the phraseology of the Ramah. He says the Ramah wrote la'akar afia after baking. Says the Mishnah Berurah, loshen ein medukta kol kach. This loshen is not very precise. Upirushai, and what the Ramah actually means is akar bishul b'kedera, after you cooked this product in a pot in water, or v'atigun, or you fried it b'machavas in a pan, because we're not talking about a baked product. This whole discussion of Sif Yud Gimel over here until now is talking about something that was cooked or fried. We're not talking about baked. The Chavetz Chaim says many Achrayim reached the conclusion that dafka im yesh b'haprusais kazayis. Many Achrayim agree that not only is this whole discussion only germane if it retains Tayar Lechem, but this whole discussion is also only germane if the piece that you're left with at the end is the size of a kazayis. The ilavachi, because if you're talking about something that's less than a kazayis, so now let's look at what we have here. We have something that started out as a blila ava, so yes, it started out similar to lechem. You went ahead and you cooked it and you fried it, and maybe at the end of the day it also has tar lechem. But if it's less than a kazayis, then many of the Achrayim say, the ilavachi al yidei abishul oitigun nispatel shem lechem legamri le'inyan hamoitzi. If it's less than a kazayis, then many Achrayim agree, even according to the Yesh Chalkim, if it's less than a kazayis, since it was cooked or fried, it loses the shem lechem, ukiahid le'el Sif Yud, like we said earlier in Sif Yud, where in Sif Yud we talked about a piece of bread that you went ahead and you cooked. And we said, you cooked a piece of bread, well, piece of bread takes off tar lechem, and we said, look, if it's more than a kazayis, it's hamoitzi, because it started off as 100% bona fide bread. Now you just went there and cooked it. You took off the tar lechem, but if it's bigger than a kazayis, it still retains hamoitzi. But if it's less than a kazayis, we said that it's not lechem anymore. And yeah, okay. Eis Kanayin test tar lechem. You have to have tar lechem, the Ramah says. If you don't have tar lechem, the final product, then this whole machlokes is not germane. Says the Mishnah Berurah, v'lo dami l'Sif Yud. This is not similar to the halacha that we learned in Sif Yud, where we talked about a piece of actual bread that you cooked, and since you cooked it, it doesn't have tar lechem, and we said that if it's bigger than a kazayis, you still make hamoitzi. So over there, you see that you don't need tar lechem. Yet over here, the Ramah is saying, by this blila ava that you cooked or you fried, you must have tar lechem. Says the Mishnah Berurah, it's very simple why it's not the same. This is not the same as the halacha in Sif Yud, where we said that you don't need tar lechem in order for the bracha to be amoitzi if the piece is bigger than a kazayis. The hasam hayutkila pas gomer. Because again, he drives home this point again and again, says the Mishnah Berurah. In scenario number 1 of Sif Yud, we were talking about pas gomor. We were talking about an actual piece of rye bread that's bigger than a kazayis that you went ahead and you cooked. Over there, even though the cooking takes away the tar lechem, if you have a piece that's bigger than a kazayis, you're going to make hamoitzi. Why? Because it was pas. It was pas, and it's still bigger than a kazayas. It doesn't lose the hamaitzi. Over here in Sif Yud Gimel, we're not talking about something that was ever actual pas. Over here, we're talking about something that started out looking like pas, because it was a blila ava, but then you went ahead and you cooked it and you fried it. If the final product doesn't have tar lechem, so then it can't be hamaitzi, because you didn't prepare it the way you prepare bread, and at the end of the day, it doesn't look like bread. So it can't be a hamaitzi. Okay, now we turn to the very top line of Ayin Amid Aleph. Continues the Ramah. Avol, pastida ukreplach. Now, pastida and kreplach seem to be one and the same. I think it's just a question of 2 different languages. Avol pastida ukreplach mikri tar lechem. Pastida and kreplach are considered to have tar lechem. Okay, let's take a look at what pastida and kreplach are. Says the Mishnah Berurah's cut and pay, pastida ukreplach. Well, we all know what kreplach are. Pirush, what are pastida and kreplach? Shemimula'in bibasar. This is a product where you make a dough out of a blila ava, and this is an unflavored dough. This is not like a flaky dough that might be flavored. This is an unflavored dough. It's flour, water, maybe it has a little salt, but it's really a blila ava that is similar in every way to a bread dough. So you make a blila ava, you roll it out, and then you take meat, you put it in, you make a pocket, you fold it up, you seal it, and now you drop it in your chicken soup, and you cook it in your chicken soup. Or you cook it in water, or you fry it. That's what a kreplach is. Says the Mishnah Berurah Pirish, Shemimulayin bebasar, u'kemoishe kasav seif siman zeh b'hagah. And this is going to be discussed in greater detail later on at the end of this siman in another hagah in the Ramah. So that's what we're talking about over here. We're talking about over here kreplach. Di'ilu mimulayin b'mine peros. Now, you remember when we spoke about pasabah b'kistin, we said if you prepare a dough and you fill it with apple, and you make an apple strudel, or you fill it with nuts and sugar, we said right away that that's pasabah b'kistin. Yet over here, we're not saying that the pastida and the kreplach are pasabah b'kistin. Explains the Mishnah Berurah. He says, Di'ilu mimulayin b'mine peros. If this dough would be filled with types of fruits, it would be filled with apple or something else, heavy pasabah b'kistin. That would be a different halacha. That would be the halacha pasabah b'kistin. And then, if you're not kaveh suda, it would be a mezainos. Even if you bake it in an oven. And yet, over here, the Ramah is going to say that these kreplach, you have a big shaila on what bracha to make on the kreplach, and you shouldn't eat them unless you're going to wash on another piece of bread. All of this is only according to the opinion of the Ramah. I think I have to break here for a second and go back into the Ramah to put greater context on what we're talking about. But first, I want to be very clear about the contrast that the Mishnah Berurah just told us about. We know that pasabah b'kistin. I always stressed this when we were learning the halachas of pasabah b'kistin. Pasabah b'kistin is bread. It's pas. It's pas bread, haba b'kistin. But it's pas. That's why there's a great challenge of pasabah b'kistin, where if you're kaveh suda on it, you got to make hamoitzi and birkas hamazon. If you're not kaveh suda, it's mezainis and alamichya. Why? Because it is pas. It really is lechem. And really, the default position should be that it should be Amoitzi and Birkas Hamazon. Why is it that the halach is not that way? The halach is not that way because it's not the derech to be Kaveh Suda on Pasuk Babakistan. And since it's not the derech to be Kaveh Suda on Pasuk Babakistan, it doesn't get the milah that Chazal gave to Lechem, where they gave Lechem, Netilas Yadayim, Birkas Hamoitzi, and Birkas Hamazon. That goes for bread. Bread you Kaveh Suda on, and you eat it together with the other things that you're eating in the meal. But you're not Kaveh Suda on Pasuk Babakistan. Therefore, the default of Pasuk Babakistan is Bezoinos. If you're Kaveh Suda, it must be Hamoitzi, because it is Pas, and you were Kaveh Suda. So then it's Hamoitzi. Over here, we're talking about a kreppel. A kreppel is a blila ava. It's a real bread dough, but instead of filling it with fruit, instead of filling it with sweets, you filled it with meat. Now, we're going to see at the end of the Siman why that makes a difference. And to give you a heads up on what the Mishnah Berurah is going to say in a further shir, the Mishnah Berurah is going to say that when you take pas, when you take a bread dough and you fill it with sweets or you fill it with fruits, it becomes obvious that that is not really a seuda food. It's really something that's eaten likinuach. It's really something that's eaten to give you a good taste. It's a dessert. It's a side. It's not really a seuda food. But if you fill pas with meat, then we're going to see all bets are off. Because if you fill it with meat, that in essence is a seuda, right? You could take a corned beef sandwich, so you could take 2 slices of rye bread, put on mustard, put on corned beef, and have a corned beef sandwich, and now you were kaveh seuda on pas. Or you could take a bread dough, you could roll up corned beef in it, stick it in the oven and bake it, and essentially you have the same thing. You have bread with corned beef. The only difference is that in one scenario, you took the bread that was already baked, you put on mustard, you slapped on corned beef, and you were kaveh seuda that way. This way, you took a bread dough and you filled it with corned beef and you baked it together. Why should that downgrade the bracha? Now, you're already thinking about deli roll. What should we do with deli roll? Okay, we'll get to that later at the end of the Siman. But where it comes into play over here is we're talking now about kreplach. You might look right away at kreplach and say, I don't understand. Kreplach is Pasuk Babakistan. Says the Mishnah Berurah, no, kreplach are not Pasuk Babakistan. Why? Because they're filled with meat. And that we're going to deal with at the end of the Siman. So now, understanding that distinction, let's go back into the Ramah. So now the Ramah on the top line says, Aval pastida ukreplach. So now you have a real blila ava, and you're going to prepare it through cooking it. You're going to wrap the meat in this blila ava, which is really a bread dough, and then you're going to drop it into the soup, or into a pot of boiling water, and you're going to cook it. Or you're going to put it in a pan with a copious amount of oil, and you're going to fry it. Says the Ramah, Aval pastidu ukreplach mikri tayar lechem. That is called tayar lechem. Okay, so now, if it's called tayar lechem, what's the halacha? So what do we have now? We have a blila ava that you're cooking or frying. Okay, what's the halacha of a blila ava that you cook or you fry? Machlokes. You have the first shita in Sif Yud Gimel that says that it's a bar minim mezainos because you didn't bake it. We have the Yesh Cholkim that says it's hamoitzi because it started off as a blila ava and the final product is tayar lechem. So it's hamoitzi. Said the Ramah, Yirei Shamayim should be Yoitze Shneim. Yirei Shamayim should only eat it Toich Suda when he washed on another piece of bread. Says the Ramah, Aval pastidu ukreplach mikri tayar lechem. That is called tayar lechem, which I must say I find interesting that he says that a krepel is called tayar lechem, but he says it's called tayar lechem. Ve'ein la'achlam, and you should not eat them, ela im kein berach al shara pastchila, unless you made a bracha on a piece of bread first. Why? Because that's the mechaber that said v'yirei shamayim yetze yedei shneim. Okay, let's go back into Mishnah Berurah Eis Cut and Pay. Pastidu kreplach pirish shemulan babasar. like is going to be discussed at the end of the Siman in another Ramah, where the Ramah is going to explain why this isn't possible b'kistin. Because if it would be full of apples or sweets, heavy possible b'kistin, it would be possible b'kistin. And then you would make a bar minim mezainis on it if you're not kaveh suda, even if it's baked in an oven. We're talking about cooked or fried. The this is the opinion of the Ramah. The Taz disagrees with Sfirale, and the Taz holds the gam pasa mamula babasar v'dagim ukahai gavda heavy gam kain b'chlal pasa b'kistin. The Taz argues on the Ramah, and the Taz says, hold it. Kreplach are also pasa b'kistin. I don't care if you fill it with sweets, nuts, fruits, or meat. You have a dough that's filled with something else, that's pasa b'kistin. V'inachinami, but the light kava, if you weren't kaveh suda, l'kuli almum of arkalai bari mizaynis, or lach rabbi and chalish. U'b'sayf ha-siman yispar lahalacha b'zeh. At the end of the siman, we'll go into this in greater detail. Ais kan pei aleph mikri tar lechem. He considers this to have tar lechem. And therefore, the Ramah said, since it has tar lechem, you should not eat them unless you wash on another piece of bread. What the Ramah wants to say is, be a Reish Shamayim. If you're a Reish Shamayim, a Roitza Lotzei Stas and Yesh Cholkim Anal, who wants to be Machmir like the Yesh Cholkim, so if you're following the Mechaber, who said that the Reish Shamayim should be Yoitza the sheet of the Yesh Cholkim, so then you shouldn't eat the krepel unless you wash first. Now we go weiter in the Ramah, second line down. Middle of the line. V'chol zeh loy mayri, ela be'isa she'ein bo shemen udvash v'kiyoytzabay. Now, and this is where this is going to be negeya also to something like deli roll. V'chol zeh loy mayri, ela be'isa she'ein bo shemen udvash v'kiyoytzabay. This whole discussion is also only germane if we're talking about an unflavored dough. Ela shemetugan bahen. It's an unflavored dough. The only thing is that you went down and you fried it in oil. Avalim nilush ben kvar, avalim nilush ben. But if you're talking about a dough that's flavored, it was kneaded with oil and eggs and fruit juices. So it's a flavored dough. Kvar nes bardina, it's a possible b'kistin. Then it's possible b'kistin. So the Ramah is saying, when I'm telling you that kreplach are an issue because they have tar lechem, so it's a blila ava with tar lechem, and you cooked it and you fried it, so it falls into the machlekes as if you're gimel. That's if the dough is an unflavored dough. But if the dough is a flavored dough, then the shaila doesn't even start. Then it's definitely possible b'kistin. It can't be anything more than possible b'kistin because it's a dough that's flavored. A dough that's flavored is possible b'kistin. Ice cut and pay base. The calls that pirish. Hayesh cholkam anal. This whole kerfuffle over here of the machlekes of the day Rishayna and the yesh cholkam that are machmer, disfir lehu develechem gomur, who holds that a blila ava that was cooked or fried is genuine bread umavarchale hamaitzi because it has tar lechem. Va'afilu b'deloy kavasuda, even if you're not kaveh suda on it. Mayri dafka be'isa shaloi nilusha mitchilasa b'shemen udvash. That's only talking about a dough that wasn't kneaded at the outset with oil or honey. It's not flavored. Well, that's why the Yesh Cholkim holds. Since this dough started out as a mamish bread dough, it started out as a blila ava, and it ended off with tar lechem. Loy nifka shma le'inyan chiyav hamaitzi. It doesn't lose its shame pas in the context of the chiyav to make hamaitzi after nitkin or achakach b'shemen v'nasika pas kistin. Even though you fried it later, so it's somewhat similar to pas kistin. If it started out as a blila ava, as an unflavored blila ava, so that means it mamish started out as a bread dough. And the final product is tar lechem, so then the yesh cholkom holds it's hamaitzi. But if you kneaded the dough from the outset with honey, or with ukahai gavna, or other flavored products, and it has the flavor. Rabbi say, I'm not talking about this nonsense that you buy in the store, mezainis rolls and mezainis bread. Rabbi said it's nonsense. It's nonsense. They go ahead and they make bread, or they make rolls, and they put in some apple juice. It tastes, you go and buy, Stearns makes a whole wheat bread in a green package that they call mezonus, and in a red package that they call hamoitzi. What's the difference? The green package has apple juice in it. The red package doesn't have apple juice in it. Rabbi say it tastes 100% the same. And you kaveh a suda on it, for heaven's sakes. That's what it's for. It's mamish bread to be kaveh a suda on it. This business of it being hamoitzi is a pella otzum. It's a pella otzum. The idea that bread should be hamoitzi. Or you go and you buy these mezonus rolls. Or you buy these sandwiches that say that they're made on a mezonus roll. Rabbi say it's not mezonus, it's hamoitzi. It's hamoitzi and Birkas Hamazon, there's nothing to talk about. But if you have a blila ava that was kneaded from the outset with honey, oil, apple juice, eggs, and the flavor is in the dough, in that case, it never was a bread dough. And therefore the Yesh Cholkim here in Sif Yud Gimel would never say that would be hamoitzi, but like kavasuda layu, darei kapas kisten. If you kaveh suda on it, so then the first opinion would say it's a mezainis. Tigun ifkia bitaras lachem legamri. Well, yesh cholkim avar hamoitzi birkas hamazon kedin pas kisten. Okay, I know that we're stopping a little short, but I'm going to have to stop over here. Next time we'll continue with Sif Yodalid. Thank you so much for joining me for Limud HaTorah. The schus of Limud HaTorah should be Megan on Gans Klal Yisrael. The Baruch should send Yeshua Sefurus Parnas and Shidduchim to all those in need, and we should be zeicher to see the Bias Tzedek b'meher v'yameinu. Amen. Be well.